Thank you for being here. So we're going to do something, a session on finance. So I guess it's interesting, hopefully for most of you. First, the idea was to do a session today and this afternoon on financing, but not just on game, but also on film and maybe also transmedia. Because as you may know, the Berlinale, so the film festival, the very famous Berlin Film Festival is starting tonight, basically, for the next 10 days. So we thought it would be an opportunity to do the link, because obviously now we are all living in a digital world where everything is very blurred and you can access on your mobile, on tablet, everything, film and video games. So hopefully, all these sectors will be starting to join, and people enjoy film and games in any case. But in terms of financing, it's a bit different. Still today, there are some ways to finance movies that are quite different from the ways to finance games or other type of entertainment. And the question I wanted to bring today is really, is it the right way forward? Do we have to continue like that, working on different types of financing models? Or is there a way to, or is it more appropriate for the developers, for the different distributors of broadcasters of content to participate and finance this content? So that was the opportunity today with the Berlinale to talk about these two subjects, and that's what I would like to discuss. So to start with, my name is Thierry Baujard. So I'm French, as you can hear, cannot hide that. And I'm based in Berlin for a long time, and I've been working on finance for creative projects for many years. So I've been working on different types of financing coming from the film industry, but now involved in a lot in video games for the last 3 or 4 years now. But we are also working on music and publishing projects. So I'm used to understand a little bit the different types of financing depending on the sectors, and trying to put that together. I'm also heading an accelerator, a Franco-German accelerator for video game, and I see 2 representatives of it. Thank you very much for being there. That we started about 9 months ago, where we are helping companies from France and Germany to access some money and to accelerate. And just for you to know, we've got a lot of support from the Franco-German broadcaster, Arte, who is very much into film, into television, into video game, into VR. So it's one of the, I think, a nice example of that. So in any case, I will present, or they will present themselves, that's maybe easier, my 3 panelists today. And I've been chosen them, of course, on purpose of the discussion. So the one bringing all together, I guess it's Ina from Medienboard. She will explain what she does, but Medienboard is obviously working on film and video game and VR. Timo from Finland, who is also involved in all these different sectors. And then Josef from Bayern, from Bavaria, who is today doing more films only. Not only, he will say.
But focused on films.
That's right, focusing on film, and will tell us a bit how it works in film. So maybe just to start, to present yourself quickly, who you are and how do you finance projects at the moment. What is your way to do it? And then we will start the discussion. Ina?
Okay,
please.
Hello everyone. So my name is Ina Goring. I'm a funding advisor at Medienboard Berlin-Brandenburg, and that's the funding institution for creative content here for the capital region of Germany. And Medienboard is funding films and games and VR since 2 years. And so I'm actually responsible for funding projects of interactive and innovative content, how we call it, because it's not only games, it's anything that's interactive. It used to be apps, and now we're focusing on VR and games. And it's project funding, so we're not funding companies, but you can apply with a project. And basically it's 3 deadlines a year. We have 1.3 million euros annually in the pot. And
maybe you could talk quickly about your last call, results of a call that you did a few days ago. And especially there are some interesting projects coming from film producers doing interactive projects.
Yeah,
maybe just an example.
So just 2 days ago, we published our last funding round. And it was really interesting because I think it was an historic mark in our funding program, because for the first time, actually, we had over half of all the project applications were around virtual reality and 360 videos. It kind of really depends who's coming. Like from the game side, it's like VR games. So it's, I would say, like true virtual reality. But also film producers now are starting to get into this business. And then it's always like 360 video content. So maybe less interactive, but nonetheless also intriguing stuff. And to be precise, we funded 7 projects for almost €500,000. And it was 2 games, virtual reality games. We also funded a prototype for maybe like a possible future VR theme park here in the region. And also to like, film-inspired 360 content. One of the very famous company, X-Filme Berlin, everybody knows Run Lola Run and Goodbye Lenin, so they're the producers of those famous films, and now they're also getting into this VR business with an upcoming project.
Yes. Which is a TV series, in fact.
Which is a TV series, Berlin Babylon, and there's going to be content for that. And the other one is a very interesting, actually really chilling project, because it's going to cover the Wannsee conference. I don't know if you're aware, but in 1942, that was the infamous conference where the fate of 11 million Jews was decided. In Wannsee, which is very close to actually Medienboard is located in Potsdam, so it's a very Berlin theme. Yeah, and it's going to be a series and a film experience to be at this conference. So this is the whole range of projects we just funded.
Can you say a few words about the film side when you invest? Because of course it's the Berlinale today, so I just saw the number of, I think it's 21 projects that Medienboard has financed or part of the financing in films. So can you tell us a little bit about the film side of Medienboard?
So, of course, Medienboard started out as a film funding institution. Yeah. That's just the history here in Germany, how this whole funding creative content started out. I think it started out in the 70s. So, they have some years ahead in the history of funding, and Medienboard is actually having 25 million euros per year for the film program.
More than,
It is more, but it's the history. We're getting more money, so of course we're working on that. So this is, of course, like the much more bigger chunk of what Medienboard is doing. And yes, and it shows the result is, for example, 21 films that we or Medienboard funded are now shown in Berlinale. And this is also everything from big feature films, international co-productions, short films, documentaries, any kind of genre. But that's also what we want to reflect in our innovative program. We're open to any genre and form, platform.
And what's the average financing in the interactive project part and in the film side? A little bit on the average?
Average, which?
The budget, the financing part that you're giving? On the interactive project is what, around 40, 50, 60?
You mean like for a film, a co-finance?
Well, on the interactive project side and on the film side.
Well, unfortunately, basically, you can always add just like one, digit.
Yeah.
So in general, like for the interactive fund, we give like a range of 50,000 to 100,000. And you might want to add a 0 at the end of this.
For the film side.
Yeah. Like, of course, documentary films get less, short films less, so it's the big range. I think the highest number was maybe 1 million, but for big Hollywood production, co-production.
Okay, thank you. Timo, can you tell us a bit more about what you do in Finland? Maybe it's not so known yet here, but you're doing some very interesting project financing as well. So.
Yes, hello everyone. I am from IPR.VC management. IPR stands for intellectual property rights, obviously. VC stands for venture capital, that is that we are running a venture capital fund, 20 million euro fund from institutional investors. We started with the idea that most investors are in media are investing in technology, and we noticed that while content is the important part, investors do not understand that very well. So what we did, we started building the fund. The most difficult thing we have already done that is that we met with those finance people from pension insurance companies and other institutional investors. You know, they are middle-aged guys in grey suits, and they don't actually understand anything about games or TV, things like that. We were able to articulate to them that why it is business-wise a good idea to invest in content, and we were able to make them understand that it's a good idea, and then they invested in our fund. With content, we mean film, TV content, animation, games, internet content. We've been now up and running since September 2015. We've invested about half of this fund, and we've done several game investments, several film investments, and so on. And we are investing, we can invest in company equity in the way that normal venture capital companies do, or we are able to invest in productions.
So this is obviously very, very interesting because, I mean, I've been working a lot as well on this shift from technology investment to content investment. And obviously, as Timo mentioned, most of the people involved as venture capital in the sector, they tend to invest in companies only. And they have difficulties to understand how to work on project financing. When on the other side, most of the subsidy system, etc., like Medienboard, for example, work mainly on project financing. So it's always quite difficult to mix both. And that's quite interesting to see that you're doing that now and manage to convince some people. On our side, we've done that as well with different investors across Europe. So it's not impossible, but as Timo said, it takes a lot of, let's say, education and explanation about why it could be also interesting and that it's a different model than the typical equity investment in company with exit, etc. So it's a different approach and interesting to see that. Josef?
So perhaps I start a little bit with my background. So I come from the financing side. I worked for a huge European bank for 21 years in the media sector. And I was focused on movie financing, film financing, and we did some transactions in the game sector. And 2 years ago, I decided to left the bank and build up my own company. And when I saw that the market has different desires and needs, in the meantime, I built up 3 companies at all, so to fulfill all the directions, not only the film financing side, but special investments also in games or in companies. The newest thing is also to get into technology, because talking about games and movies, the future will be those two worlds will be connected, and it is not more the thing to talk about games and movies. We are talking about IPs, and the user is deciding if he wants to see it in the theaters, on TV, or in his mobile, on apps, whatever. So the future will be driven by IPs and good ideas, and not about a special way of viewing something.
Yes, I agree with that. The only question for me today is really understanding how investors are really understand IP. Because today they understand different sector, different ecosystem, so like the film ecosystem with, distribution, broadcast, and then the game ecosystem with publisher. And sometimes it's difficult so how do you approach that?
That's quite easy because the investors, they know the IPs. We are talking about Marvel, Avengers, and Star Wars, and all those specific stuff. So that are brands, IPs. So it's a mixture out of them, and so we are in a time where sequels, prequels, everything. If you have invented one IP, you do merchandising, you do everything about that. You create a community, a fan crowd. So that's also the reason why I'm also involved in crowdfinancing. Because you have to find the audience and the users, and that's the important part. And if you can convince the investors in an idea, then you have to show them why a lot of people wants to spend money on this IP.
But, I agree with you on Marvel. It's very simple. But when we talk about independent European, we don't have so many examples of very, very strong community. Of this size.
Yeah,
there are communities,
but you have to try it. So I'm involved also in Iron Sky, and we did Iron Sky 1. Now we are short before finalizing Iron Sky 2. Last year we closed a deal in China. It's a totally Chinese production. We will shoot this in Chinese language. And it is a spin-off. It is because the company who is producing Iron Sky, it's Iron Sky Universe. It is, and we make mugs, we make T-shirts. We have a community, and that's the reason you have to find your fans and your.
Game is very strong for that. Game has been always strong.
Game is still missing for Iron Sky, indeed.
Yeah.
And we are thinking about producing or developing a game of Iron Sky for quite a long time. But
you're very welcome here in this region.
But Timo, I guess you know them very well as well, because Iron Sky is from Finland.
Actually, I talked to a producer from Iron Sky, I think already 2 years ago about the
Oliver,
game idea.
You talked to
No,
Oliver?
it was a woman. But
okay.
So just to refresh the invitation to have a talk.
The thing is, we are thinking about the right concept. So before we make an application, because having this crowdfinancing and this community in place, we always communicate with the community, and they say, okay, we want this and that. And so before we do the next step, we want to have the community convinced what they want to have.
Timo, you're interested in Iron Sky?
Not about Iron Sky, but I would like to take an approach to what is the role for financing. How many of you actually have investor money in your companies or projects? Couple, and the rest will be having later. I always say that when you need financing for the project or for the company, there is the obvious need that you need the money there. But one should always ask, what kind of money do I want here? So it might be some, let's say, public funding money which helps to do some pilots. It might be crowdfunding money which helps to kind of find the fans and kind of do some pre-sales to them. Or it might be, if it is money from investors like us, then we bring kind of pressure to grow. As we are then kind of high risk, high reward investors. We are ready to take risks, but we kind of want that the companies we invest in will try to do something very big. So then we are happy when companies in our portfolio have made something big on international markets and have succeeded. And if you want this kind of pressure, then our kind of investor is a good one. In some other cases, other kinds of investors are good ones. So it's not just that you get the money, but do also think that from what kind of investor you get the money.
Yes, I mean, I think that's an important point, obviously, on the expectation from the investors. And there are different types of investors with different types of expectation on what they want. And I guess, you can say, but of course, for example, it's a loan that you're giving. It's not a subsidy. So you expect at least to get it back with something. And the more you can get, I guess it's possible. And yes, on Timo, it's more venture capital approach. So kind of, high risk, high returns. And Josef, how do you look at that in terms of returns?
It depends on the hat I'm wearing. So I'm also involved in the Bavarian subsidy, as you know. So then we have also some kind of loans, but not full recourse loans. It's a mixture between subsidy and investment. And then we have the usual bank financing and, of course, investment money. So, and if we are talking about equity, then I believe in some kind of last in, first out structure, because that's for me the best way to make sure that the project will happen. I'm not so convinced about doing real development financing because it's high risk, and usually my investors, they are not happy if they don't get their money back, but they are happy if they have a good risk situation that will. They don't want to earn a fortune, but they want to have average interest or revenue of 10 or 15%, but that means they don't want to have a 100% risk.
Okay, so share the risk.
Yeah. And by working together with producers, developers, I also try to find other alternative financing instead of real equity, because equity is, if everything works out, it is really, really expensive for the partner. So I started some years ago with product placement in movie financing. Now I convinced some of the clients also to get into mobile games, apps, and they see that the product placement or brand integration in games could be more value and is cheaper than to do this in really big Hollywood movies, for example.
Okay. Back to what you say about the development, I wanted to know how the Medienboard is positioned itself, because of course we know that one of the key problems for developers is how to develop this prototype. And the development side, which is the same in film, in the script writing and the development part before the production. And of course, it's very difficult to get investors into that because of the high risk and the time as well, which I think we don't talk enough about that. But one of the very important criteria for investors is the time. When are they going to get some of the money back, the first part of the money? We talked about last in, first out. That's one of the first criteria now for investors. And of course, development is very early on, so it takes even more time, so it's even more complex. So are you positioning yourself more as Medienboard, as a public body, in trying to help these people to develop and to do prototype until they find some further production money? Or do you want to be part as well of production? Maybe it's different between the film and the game side?
Yeah, so first it all starts with the wording, actually,
Yes.
because in the film world and game world, we use the same words for different parts, which confuses everyone. So I just repeat it. When you, in games, when you do prototyping, this is called development. In films. So you develop a script, and in the film world, actually, then production is the actually making of it and programming, and in the game world, that's the development. So just to make sure, so I will call the development phase the prototyping phase, and the production the production, when you actually do it. So we're actually funding both phases, but we have a clear focus on production, I have to say, because our fund, which was actually established 10 years ago, so like it's not a new thing to do interactive, it's actually already 10 years old. It started out with this, oh, let's help the developers make prototypes. But this whole thing changes also with the technology and what's available. Now we have game engines like Unity, Unreal Engine, they're basically for free. You just, like later on comes a share, but like you can start out right away. Now everything changes because it really depends what you're doing. But now I get applications where people come with a prototype they made in 24 or 48 hours. I'm just having an example. For example, we just funded a game, a VR game, which was actually based on a prototype that was done in a 48 hours game jam. So this is basically kind of, you know, the whole application round has its own competition, you know, whoever comes. And of course, as a financier, it's just more easy to make decisions if you already see something. You know, the more you see, the better it is for financiers to decide, okay, is it going to be good or not? And so, but this is the whole balancing, because of course, is it too much and you're too far away in production, then we cannot fund it anymore, because basically it's required. You totally set like a new thing. So you have to wait, but like I wouldn't consider a prototype that was done in 48 hours as like a ready project. But like, to make this long answer shorter, we do both phases, but we have a clear focus on production. It just makes the whole, that it is a lone thing, easier.
Just want to add one thing. You mentioned prototyping. Now, for the last 2 years, prototyping is also very important in the movie business for doing bigger movies, to avoid really bad box office. Because if you have a $100 million movie, for example, and you invest in a prototype for 2 or 3 million, and then you can do the test screening. So, and you do it also with the same technology as the game developer. So usually the prototyper in the movie business, they are coming from the game industry.
Do you have actually examples of movies who've done that? Because I don't know of any.
Part of the movies, for example, Planet of the Apes, the opening sequence was prototyped, and a lot of Hollywood producers and directors are concentrating on prototyping right now. So I can give you...
Actually, it sounds really cool, and I would love to bring this idea into the film producer world, because I would say for the German film producers, this concept is not known, because usually it's a process. You have like a script author, you know, it's really like somebody writes a book and it's his baby, and they hardly share the process of writing the script. I mean, of course, within the team, but it's not like a game jam thing or like a crowdfunding thing where you totally open your idea.
I work together with 2 Berlin-based producers, but we are, at the moment, we are thinking about prototyping 2 movies in the UK, because we get really significant funding out of UK. Also with the text-driven models, but also that should be an idea to discuss this later on. And the most important thing is if you do a prototyping with more or less the same technology for games and movies, you always think at the prototyping stage not only about movie, but you're thinking about TV series, you're thinking about games, you're thinking about all the transmedia stuff. So I think prototyping is really important to bring the worlds together. And in the future, I think there will be not a game developer or a movie producer. They will concentrate on one IP, and then they will make it, and then they will do some games, movies, TV series, and all of with the same basic.
Yes, sure.
So, I like the idea that there will be a common IP which will take a form of film and game and so on. In our work in the last 1.5 years, we've been a bit disappointed that is not what happens today yet. There is film projects or there is a game project, and there might be an idea that there would be a game based on a film, but that's kind of very, very on an outer circle that it will take time.
But don't you think it's also because of the financing that is very specific? Because again, a film producer is developing a film because he's going to have access to some film finance.
The problem is that the technology was not at the stage where you can really switch between game and... now, coming back to, for example, to Avatar. James Cameron was doing Avatar, the first movie, so the sequels, they are postponed for I think the next 10 years. But the problem was that he hasn't the ability to use the material from Avatar to put it into his own game, and talking to gamers who were playing the Avatar game, they were all disappointed because it was really a bad quality of the game. And the future is to use the same material for different distribution.
But again, that's the studio approach from the US, because they obviously think about IP, because that's what they are selling. Yeah. But in Europe, that's not what we do yet. I mean,
I disagree.
If I see...
there are a lot of small independent producer studios who are working exactly on that.
Yes, but where do they find the financing?
That's
we will handle that.
The question.
Many people are working. I mean, I think all of you, all of us, we know that's the way. I mean, I think it's not a big secret to say, okay, we're developing IP. The problem is if you are an independent producer or developer who's got an IP, where do you go to get some money? And you go either there or there.
It is not easy, but it is easier if you have a strategy to bring out the game. Of course, the basic is to have an IP and to bring out a game at the same time as you bring out the movie. And the developing costs and to create a prototype, that are more or less the same costs, and you have only to find financing once and not twice.
Yeah.
I think the innovation comes from gaming side. If I'm a bit generalistic here, is that the problem is that the film producers have produced films for decades and they know how to do it. And while game industry is a more novel one, we don't have so many kind of fixed practices in gaming or game development. And the problem is that for a film producer, it is important to get the film funded. So that is that they get enough funding to make the project ready. What happens after that? There are too many film producers who are not interested what happens in the box office, because that's kind of something nice extra. For game developers, gaming companies need the users because the users pay for the game. So that's kind of a different mindset.
I mean, it's when you look at the two sectors, they are basically completely different in terms of the way it's produced and then the way it's distributed. Nearly the opposite.
But also the product-wise, if I just talk about German film producers, you basically, if you do a film, it's not a product that you can sell to the world. I mean, you finance it for the production, but you're not expecting real revenue, as you might know.
That's a German problem.
I know, but I'm just...
Well, it's in each country in Europe, it's a local, national problem. Yes.
But no. I wanted to say the difference is like for the German game developers, they actually making a product and they always thinking globally.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference in the mindset. You know, when people approach us for the funding and they hear it's a loan.
No, but it's really the difference of distribution, because obviously on game the distribution are based on platforms.
Totally,
that
like
are
all platforms are global.
As in film, it's still regulated by national distributors in each country. So and space on cinema.
I totally agree, but that's also a problem of financing, because even if there are some regions who support interactive development, Bavaria has also a strong interactive fund, but that's at the end the subsidies, the soft money for games are really low in comparison for movies, and the approach of the movie producer is to make the movie and to get his producer fee out of it, and some of them really don't care if the movie is successful or not. And the game developer, he has another problem. He must have success to get his company running.
Yes, that's exactly that. That's why the question today that, in Europe, again, I'm talking really about the European different systems, they are very, very separated. Even though I think, yes, Medienboard is maybe one of the few examples in Europe where you have in the same institution both, but still it's different and different budget, etc. The example of X-Film is a perfect example. Why didn't they, I'm just saying, they apply for film and inside of this budget getting something for the VR part? They had to apply twice, basically.
Yes.
Yes. So that's, it's a barrier for the development of the IP. You have to look at that twice.
But you have also, if you're looking to the film subsidies, you have also to apply for distribution, for example. So production and distribution is also a different topic. Yeah. So I think it makes sense to apply for games, game development, production, distribution. So you have different funds for that. And but the producer or the entrepreneur, he should think about all these things and where to apply for which fund.
I think they are thinking like that. But it's just after a question also of time, resources to be able to do all that. I think we have 20 minutes left. So if there are some questions, we can start. There's some questions in the audience.
One important point.
Yeah, okay.
When connecting doing games and doing films, there is one important word, and that is storytelling. So yes. There need to be some storytelling in the whole thing to be able that we have to get some content which works on film and on games. And for example, Angry Birds was an example where there was not essentially a very good story when they made the film, and that was kind of a problem there.
Yeah. Question? Yes?
Hello. I know that for the German federal or local film funding, you need to do the production in the area where you get the funding. Is this also true for games funding? Do you have to have a part of your production here in Berlin if you get money from the Medienboard?
So how it works with our money is that the money you get from us, which is not 100% of the total budget, you have to spend here. So like, for example, you get 50,000 for 100,000 euro worth app, just like to tell a small project, you have to at least spend the 50,000 here. But of course, we would like to see more spent here because that's the whole idea of the state money. We actually want to put an incentive out to work here, because after all, our money comes from the taxpayers in Berlin and Brandenburg. So this is an incentive to actually make more of the money that, is given. So, and how it works is, film production, they can, and that would be the same sense for, same working for games. You can combine different regions. And so usually what big firms do, they have maybe 2 or 3 million euro budget. they would film somewhere in the Bavarian Alps, so they apply there. But, you know, a lot of actors actually living in Berlin, and they do post-production here, so this is how they do it. So, but in the game production, actually, we encourage it, but it's not so, you know, it doesn't come naturally, because usually a team just sits at one city. You know, it can be different, and we actually also have other examples. But if you show, like, if you have a budget of, I don't know, 200,000 euros, one half is done in Bavaria and the other one is produced and made here in Berlin, you can combine it. So, also a long answer, but saying, yes, our money has to go back to the region, but that doesn't mean you can combine it.
So that's the advantage and the flexibility, of course, of private money. Like from Timo, I guess you don't have this requirement of local spending.
No, we don't. So with this current fund of ours, there is a certain amount we will be targeting to companies which have registration in Finland, but that doesn't restrict us to do investments also outside. And it's kind of, from our perspective, it's a good thing that the companies we invest in take benefit of this kind of investment tools in their areas, so that helps to build the whole budget. But our funding doesn't require any specific place.
Hi. So my question is around new IPs and creating an IP that would be very potentially interesting and for investors. And it's quite challenging, like, to come up with something that has potential and could be translated into, of course, a game or movies. And would you have, like, any tips relating to or examples as well of IPs that just were interesting straight away and actually contributed a lot to the founding? Thanks.
A good one. So you asked about examples of good cases. Yes. I can provide you some. There is our first film investment is a film about Tom of Finland, the Finnish famous gay artist, and that is a mainstream movie. That happens to be so that there is a US foundation who has the right to the Tom of Finland IP. So the production company has made a contract with them. But that was kind of easy for us, as we understand there is value for that IP, and the production team is able to do a kind of international film on that. That's a kind of good example that there is some existing IP. There is another one. We are financing a company called Lightyear. There is a team with a Rovio background. And they didn't have the IP in place yet, but they had kind of credible plans how they will do the thing, and they had also the track record how they had done before. So in that case, the IP was on paper, but now they have already done it.
Hello, and thanks for the great panel. My question is, do you really think that film and games will grow together more closely in the future? As I think producing a game or making a great quality game takes a very long time, while shooting the movie is only a small amount of the time that you need. But both things have to be ready at the same release date when the movie hits the cinema.
That's a good point, yeah.
So how should you solve this problem then to make high quality games that feature film actually?
I don't think so that this is a good idea to release the game and the movie at the same time, but to develop it at the same time. And if you have, for example, really movies with a lot of special effects and all these fantasy movies and fantasy games. So at the end, I was involved in some prototyping sequences of movies, and the idea is to if you bring all the background that you need for the game and you create a world, you can use it for also for movies. And if you have this, if you storage all the assets, and if the quality is high enough to use it for background for the TV series or for the game or for whatever, then I think time doesn't matter anymore, because you are creating a world. And if you have, for example, if you start with a game, you have a perfect world behind it, and then you will, if you do a sequel of the game, usually you use your assets. Why not use the assets also for movies? And if you have a prototype, and I saw a prototype with a quality of a prototype for a game with a quality of the Final Fantasy movies from not the part 7 or so, but from the part 1 or 2, and that's totally enough for a good prototype.
Sorry, you mean that basically the gamers will be now the masterminds of IP because they will have to start, because the film will come after.
No.
Well, yeah, no, I think it will come a lot more from game people.
Usually, in my experience, the IPs, most of the IPs were from books published by some children books or whatever, Harry Potter or so. It's based on the story, and then you will decide where to go.
I think, for example, what is missing is
one last thing. Do you have an example for where it actually worked out to have this partnership with film and movies, with film and games?
I can't. That's at the moment. I'm working on 2 projects, but I can't name the projects.
What about Pokemon? That is okay. There is animated series content. There is game content that they kind of interact. There might be a film as well. I don't know.
For example, I think one of the problem is that the film people and the game people don't meet. For example, how many film producers are in this conference? Yeah. I think none.
I totally agree. And so for the example I'm just working on, we have a game developer and a game director. And we choose for the same, for the movie, we choose a movie director because the approach of thinking is a different one. And usually you think as a game director or as a movie director.
Yeah, but at least that they can meet and discuss maybe some...
So yeah, and I disagree because here in Berlin they actually can meet. And actually Medienboard, we force them to meet. No, I call it forcing because actually that's what we were doing the past 10 years. Because we always thought, like, theoretically, wouldn't it be great if they meet and discuss and exchange ideas? So we have several events, actually, the past years. I mean, the whole games stuff started 2006 and 7, 8. So they had plenty of time. But so obviously we're seeing that there was no, that it's really it's kind of different worlds.
Yeah, that's right.
And so there was no intrinsic, I mean, I always made them meet, but it was like, always interesting. Yeah, you do a film, I do a game. Bye. Not saying that, there's interest, but there was no real idea. So that's why for me, the really exciting thing about virtual reality that's now arriving is actually now there's an intrinsic thing happening that they should meet, because now the film producers I have contact with, they're realizing, okay, if I want to make something 360, I actually need a programmer. Yeah. And maybe like a program like Unity, you have to stitch it together. And so they're finally reaching out intrinsically for programmers. Yeah. And of course, programmers don't have to work in the game world. They actually can choose where they can work. So that's a good thing. And yeah, it's the first time I think it makes sense.
Brings the people together.
Because they need to work together for virtual reality. And I don't know if game developers really feel the need to meet with film people for their VR experiences. I feel most of the time right now, no.
Okay, so more from
they're
the film
more
people.
Independent because they know how to work interactivity.
Yeah. Yeah, which is what is missing in film.
And they're also liking films. So, I mean, it's not like game developers are out of touch with, like, the medium film. Yeah. So I'm just saying, at least from the film producers now, they need to get someone to stitch the stuff together.
Right. We have tried a nice small human test laboratory. So we invite twice a year all companies from our portfolio to a common meetup. So they're kind of these different kinds of companies meet each other and try to find some common base for discussion. That's been really nice, actually.
Hi, Pa Schultz from PlaySnack. Thank you for the panel. I think your last point was a little bit related to the question I had. I think we were talking a lot about the difference of film and game, but that VR is bringing, both sides a little bit together. And my question is a little bit to the point of financing for VR. I think, it also brings the two areas together, but because for game developers, VR right now, because it's hard to make money with it, it sort of has to be a little bit more like film production, where they need the platform holders to, fund the projects because the market is still not there, as well as with film producers who are wanting to get to VR. They might need to think a little bit more like game developers that, thinking about the distribution, because the distribution channel is essentially the same between a game and film now, if you're talking about VR. What's your opinion about, how the financing world of VR will be? Will it be more like, gaming as it was, or will it be more like films? Will it be a hybrid? That's obviously a topic for every sector who is interested in VR is thinking about how to monetize, how to finance.
Short answer from my side. So I think it is easier at the moment to finance VR stuff for games than for movies, because there is no existing revenue model for movies right now. I'm involved in two expert groups to find a revenue model for VR content that will be placed in cinemas, in theaters. But there are a lot of challenges right now. So, for example, it is still too expensive to create VR content, and usually you only create, let's say, 1 or 2 minutes of VR content. And all the theaters, they are not, they have not the basic to show VR content. So I know Hollywood and a lot of independent players are thinking about that, and they are, I think, from the technology, they are ready to go. But the market is not ready to pay for the content right now.
Agree, gaming is the answer, and we are also waiting for the time where there will be a business model for VR content. We believe that it will be kind of PC game business model that will be a kind of premium model with a price tag, but we are not quite sure about that. There is first case in our deal flow now that we are looking at, which is a VR case with a content focus and premium model, and let's see in a couple of years what comes out of that.
I think I agree. I was in a lot of panels the past 2 days, and so I think games are still leading, even though it's not the super major player, as I saw, because there's actually so many cases like health, education, like everything, like car industry really jumped on it, to sell apartments, like there's basically anything possible. So that's why I think the answer to who's going to finance it can only be hybrid, because there's so many people interested in it. And like, as for my institution, as I said, we fund games and also film-inspired VR experiences. So, but also our objective is to foster our region here. Like, we want to be Berlin, competing and be innovative. So that's also another reason we have. So it's different to, of course, private equity. But so, yeah, I think it will be many sources, whoever's interested.
Yeah, so on that subject, that's something, of course, we are very interested, because there's a lot of excitement. Everybody's looking for the right revenue model for VR. It's not there yet. What we've just started to set up a network of investors for VR. And we've been talking to many people, and yes, it's an hybrid group of people, because on the 15 people we have a quarter of private money, a quarter of public money. We have some broadcasters. Broadcasters are very interested in it. Some, not all of them, but some in broadcasters are very interested in that. And the last quarter are more like distribution platform or new, VR in cinema, etc., or VR center. But there is definitely an appetite to invest. As you know, billions have been invested in technology. And now we are sitting up with this technology, and people don't buy so much these glasses because there's not so much content to see. So, okay, it's a typical catch-22 problem. And I think we're looking into that now to look at the content. So it may take some time, but yes, people are definitely interested, and we have for this network already different partners, including the Medienboard, but also OneImage in Belgium, Immerse UK, which is the association of VR companies in the UK, and Arte is very, very interested in that as well. So we have definitely some people supporting that. And yes, we in the next 2 years, I guess we will be very busy looking at VR content and trying to understand potential revenue models and see what's the best way to finance. So thank you very much. Thanks for being there. Thank you.